In the previous videos, we mentioned about the PEO assessment. The assessment is intended to determine whether the objective of the program is being achieved. This is conducted 3 to 5 years after graduation of the students. There are various ways for you to conduct this kind of assessment. In general, this can be classified into indirect and direct assessment. Now let us proceed our discussions with the PO assessment. The purpose of doing this PO assessment is to determine the extent to which a program achieves its intentions. You know that a program produces graduates. These graduates shall eventually be discharged into the industry. For a typical engineering program, we are producing engineers. There should be minimum requirements and attributes as required from an engineer so that they can function well in the industry. Now, IEA provides us guidelines in terms of the graduate attribute as required from the graduate engineers. And the accreditation bodies like EAC shall adopt those graduate attributes as the requirement to a typical engineering program. With that said, we have 11 POs. Now, the assessment of this PO, it will be by the time of the graduations. We will need to make sure that a students going through the entire program develop the relevant attributes as stipulated by IEA in terms of the graduate attributes, so that they stay competitive within the industry. So by the time they have completed the program, we will need to do the assessment in terms of the POs. We want to know whether the program has the ability to produce quality graduates. Now when it comes to the assessment, there are two types, direct and indirect assessment. The direct assessment, it will be acquired directly from the students' performance and results. This has been constantly monitored throughout the semesters, years, and throughout the entire academic program. There will be assignment, tests, final exam, reports, presentations, and etc. The students' performance are then analyzed and evaluated in order to determine the attainments of the course outcome. And then, based on the relationship between the course outcome and the program outcome, the attainments of the PO can be determined directly and explicitly. This is the model that we have been mentioning all the while. You collect the data in terms of the students' results. You analyze the student result. You determine the attainments of the course outcome. Based on the overall performance of the students, we will be able to know whether the course is performing well, whether the teaching and learning activities are effective, and then based on the attainment status of the course outcome, we are able to predict the attainment status of the program outcome. However, bear in mind that the assumptions that CO attain will bring to the attainments of the PO, it will only be valid when the entire CO and PO models are properly aligned. It is when the COs is strongly correlated to the POs. You can say that the relationship between CO and PO are pure assumption at this stage. Now, in order to confirm this, we will need a verification process. You will need to acquire some other informations where the relevant assessment tool should be of different nature or mutually exclusive in terms of the data set in order to verify the attainment outcome as concluded from the students' results. It is possible that based on the students' results, the PO is considered attained. However, when you do some other studies, you realize that that is not actually the scenario. That means there is misalignment between what you assume and what is in the reality. In this case, you will have to look into your PO and CO model, whether there are any flaws, any limitations, any possible reasons leading to such an inaccurate assumptions, and so on and so forth. Now, when we talk about the verifications, this is where the indirect assessment comes in. You might need to do some survey and questionnaires as a mechanism to verify the attainments of the POs. This kind of indirect measurements rely more heavily in terms of the perceived value of the learning experience. You can conduct survey among the graduates. You may also conduct the survey with the company supervisor after the students going through the industrial training. By the time students doing the industrial training, they are either at the end of the third year or somewhere in the final year. Now, the feedback from the company that students undergo the industrial training can give us some ideas whether the programs is performing as it is intended to. But bear in mind that when you talk about the indirect assessment, it is more towards the perceived value. Now, when we have a mechanism that measures the attainments directly, the indirect assessment will serve as supporting purposes. Normally, we will use this as a mechanism for verifications of the direct measurements. Next, let us talk about the PO attainment model. Basically, there are three types of models here: accumulating models, dominating model, and also culminating models. All these models are similar in the sense that they follow these frameworks. You acquire the result from the students, analyze the result, determine the attainments from the COs, and then subsequently we will be able to determine whether the PO are attained. You will see the mechanism here is to determine the attainments of the PO based on a series of courses. Each courses will have 3 to 4 course outcomes. Based on the constructive alignment, you will be able to determine the attainment status of those POs. Now, what are the differences between these three models? If you are talking about the accumulating models, that means all the courses are considered contributing to the PO measurements. While you're talking about the dominating model, you will not consider all the courses. Instead, there will be a series of selected courses being considered in the PO measurements. Normally, those selected courses will be the core courses of that engineering program. Now, if you're talking about the culminating models, the number of courses being selected reduces. You only choose a few representative courses, typically in the range of 3 to 5 courses, in measuring the PO attainment. And these courses are normally conducted during the final year of the study, and they are normally covering a wider context in terms of the engineering knowledge, more closely resembles the industrial applications and practices. These are the courses which require the students to synthesize the knowledge that they learn throughout the 3 to 4 years of the programs. Now, in terms of the data available, if you consider all the courses, the attainments of all the CO of every courses shall be used to compute the PO attainment. you have the most data over here for the accumulating models. When it comes to the dominating models, only critical courses that strongly represent that engineering programs are being selected. These dominating models filters those courses especially required at the fundamental stage, such as mathematics, mechanics, or probably NPU courses. NPU courses are the courses made compulsory to be taken by the students within the engineering program as the supporting and additional knowledge to the students. By nature, they are not really engineering. This dominating model has the advantage to have less data to be analyzed. Second, the PO measurements is more specific. We only consider the core courses. This helps to reduce the noise or bias that can be contributed by the fundamental courses. For an example, let's say a student performs very well at the fundamental course levels. He performed exceptionally well while undertaking maths, statistics, mechanics, and so on and so forth. However, reaching towards the third and final years, students cannot perform well. Now this leads to a dilemma. How do we know that whether the students meets the requirement and possess the necessary graduate attribute before they are being discharged into the industry? If you are using the accumulating models, it is more less likely that students fulfill all the POs. However, if you are using the dominating models, probably the students may not be able to fulfill all. Next is about the culminating models. This one will pay focus to 3 to 5 courses, which are very practical and closely resembles what's going to be happening in the industry. For example, we are talking about integrated design project. In a typical integrated design project, students will have exposure and carry out the project, apply the technical knowledge in various fields of civil engineering. There will be structural design. There will be design on the geotechnical aspects, such as slope stability, retaining wall. There will also be design in terms of the water reticulations, drainage, roads, contractual part, health and safety, and etc. All this shall be covered within the integrated design project. Now, if the students do not have sufficient engineering knowledge or do not have the ability to solve problems through synthesizing engineering knowledge, students might not be able to perform well under the integrated design project. And you will see that integrated design project is the course that most closely resemble the practices in the industry. If they can perform well, that means the students can perform as an engineer. But if they cannot perform well, even though they perform well for other courses, including the fundamental courses and also the core engineering courses, not being able to perform well under the integrated design project, it still means that there are some limitations among the graduates. And this integrated design projects is normally offered in the final years of the program. Now the question here is, which model will be the best? There are universities using the accumulating models. This is the most traditional models. Most of the universities are using these models. The dominating models and the culminating models are newer models, start gaining popularity recently. Whichever models that you are using, you need to be aware of their limitations. The accumulating models include the performance of the students from the fundamental courses. This may dilute a bit in terms of the contributions of the core engineering courses. Now, when you are using these accumulating models, make sure you have some other mechanism to verify and to cross-check the true attainments of the PO as concluded from the accumulating models. Let's say now you are using the dominating models. These models relies heavily on the core engineering courses. If you look at the mechanism, this model is also quite academic based. It is with the assumptions that if the students can perform well with the core engineering courses, theoretically students will have possessed the required graduate attribute. Now when come to the verifications, probably you have to look into how do you verify this. Is it true that if students can perform well under the core engineering courses, they shall automatically can perform well as an engineer? Now if you are using the cultivating models, that means this model is the most simplified version. It disregards all the other courses except those practical courses. Now you will need to also verify the reliability of the model. What if the students cannot perform well on certain culminating courses, not simply due to they really cannot do, probably due to some other factors, such as they are having difficulty in their lives, having problem communicating with their team members, and you should have a more systematic and sophisticated system in order to distinguish this, whether the poor performance is due to lacking of technical knowledge or simply due to certain soft skills and etc. You might also need some mechanism to verify the outcome as concluded from the PO attainment analysis based on the culminating model also. I also observed that there are some universities, instead of using one of these three models, they choose to use one model to cross-check another. For example, they use the dominating models as the main analysis, and then use the cultivating models to verify the result from the dominating models, which at the same time they do some simple survey in order to further verify the attainments of the POs. This is also possible. It will be very much dependent on your strategy. How will you like to do the assessment for the POs? Now, whichever models that you are using, you will need to make sure the true attainments of the POs. Triangulations is important. You can use some mechanism to verify that. Also, you will have to make sure a good quality management system is in place. You might need external examiner to review your curriculum as well as your practice in determining the attainments of the POs. Your exam papers need to be properly moderated, as all these three models going to rely quite heavily on direct measurements. Let's say now when you come to the cultivating courses, those are more practical courses that involve capstone projects, industrial-based projects, research, and others. Now you have to work out some quality management system to ensure the consistency in terms of the assessment as well as the reliability of the assessment in terms of the students' performance. Normally, when you talk about the culminating courses, students are quite heavily assessed in various aspects. Also, you may need to involve the stakeholders when it comes to ensure the qualities of the programs. Especially, you need to know the latest development of the industry in terms of the practices and the technology use, contemporary issues, and so on and so forth. The purpose here is to reduce the gap between what the students learn in the university and what they're going to be exposed in the industry later. This is so that they can quickly adapt to the working environment later and stay competitive within the industry.